I'm Ray Zielke, pronounced correctly, Zielke. And I work with Universal Recycling Technologies, URT. We are very involved in the EPR electronic waste program there in Vermont. And we also are representing LG, who Don mentioned is the only company that's submitted a plan so far to their solar panel EPR program there in Niagara County. So we are involved. We've had many conversations with Dawn and her team and have been involved in trying to do what we can to support that law and try and get manufacturers registered to be in compliance, as she was talking about. So I just want to take a few minutes, go through what does, there's the law behind it and there's the reasons that the laws get passed, but what actually happens once the solar panel gets collected, and what is URT's process? How do we manage that? And I'm going to talk specifically, obviously, about solar panels here, but what does that look like, and where do those end products go once the solar panels have been processed? So I'm going to share my screen here. You can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So there we go. So first of all, a little bit about URT. We were founded in 2003 in Wisconsin, Janesville, Wisconsin, which is it's about an hour north and west of Chicago area on the Wisconsin side of the border. We currently operate 5 facilities, one being their local up in New Hampshire and Dover, New Hampshire. We also have facilities in Portland, Oregon, 2 facilities in Wisconsin, and 1 down in Dallas-Fort Worth area. And we primarily in the past have focused on electronics and still do, 101 million pounds in 2021 of electronics. We also do some harder to recycle items and sort and process some of those items depending on what they are. But we do solar panels, we do universal waste, lights, lamps, ballasts. We do some battery sorting, and we don't process batteries in-house. We have downstream processors for those, but we do sort by chemistries and ship those off. So currently have just on Friday 279 employees nationwide between the 5 facilities. So one of the things that URT has been focused on, especially since about 2020, is circular economy. And what really does that mean? How does that play into electronics and solar panels and other items that we handle and process? And I think one of the important things to know from a circular economy standpoint is that circular economy does not simply mean recycle. And I think those two get tied together as being synonymous in many circles, and it's not. Circular economy really is from cradle to grave, back to cradle. And what does that commodity, whatever that commodity might be, whether it's plastic or gold or silver, copper, what happens to that product from the time that it's manufactured into, let's say, a consumer product, lives its life cycle, and then has to be decommissioned, recycled, repurposed. And then how do we get those commodities from that old unit that has lived its life back into and design products that incorporate recycled plastics, post-consumer plastics, or steel, copper items, and how do we get those back into the actual products going back onto shelves in retail stores? And so we've been really focused on that. I want to focus on a couple of areas here. This diagram that you see really has 4 quadrants. URT operates pretty much in the 2 quadrants on the right-hand side that I'm going to talk about. And then on the left-hand side, we reach across the aisle and talk to the manufacturers and have many, many conversations with different OEMs and the products they're designing and their desire to incorporate these products, sometimes for financial reasons because it's going to be cheaper, or they think it's going to be cheaper, others because they really want to take their products, their old products, and decommission them, recycle them, demanufacture them, and then reuse those exact same commodities in their products because they think that's the best thing to do for the environment. So we have all of those conversations. If we look, you look in the top right, this is the first quadrant that's highlighted here. It's turned so it's easier to read. But once a unit has lived its useful life, then some of that is going to have data on it. How is that data handled? And URT is has certifications with regards to that, and we handle the security piece and the data piece, the demanufacturing, and then build to design, and basically that means how can we really decommission and recycle that specific item, and in this case solar panels. How do we recycle that solar panel and tear it apart to give us the best opportunity to then reuse the commodities if the unit itself can't be used as a whole? And so we have those conversations. We have several pieces of equipment in our facilities. We have full shred lines that you can take and I'll use this as an example. You can take a printer and you can throw it in a shredder, and our process will automate everything that comes out afterwards from the plastic and the steel and the copper and the circuit board, and then get a good quality control on that, and then taking those products and processing them, reusing them, creating a clean commodity to then remarket to the OEMs and the manufacturers. So taking this process that we have and really reincorporating those commodities, solar panels being the glass, the wafer, the aluminum, how do we get those back into the market and reuse and recycle every single piece of those solar panels that are coming to us? And Don kind of mentioned some of these, but these are really nationwide, and this was a report that the EPA put out recently. And some statistics here. I don't want to dive too much into it, but basically the statistics here are telling us that solar panel, we all know, is on the rise, right? Solar generation is on the rise, and by how much in the US. And really, again, going back to Don's comments with the county, they have several large projects that they're implementing there and installing there. But what happens at the end of the life of these things? And is the end of the life 25 years? Is it 50 years? It really is, like she said, depends on which publication or article you're reading at the time. And so the power generation from solar panels is increasing, and it is the fastest growing source of electricity in the US. And URT obviously wants to be a solution for those items. So once those panels come into our facilities, we really, we work with a couple of local players in Niagara County for their projects specifically for collecting them, because we do not have a physical presence in the county, but we have companies that we work with in other areas as well that do have a physical presence that we team up with and we partner with, and they're going to do the actual collection of the panels. And the EPR program in Niagara, the most difficult piece of that from a processor standpoint, from our viewpoint, really is that each manufacturer is responsible for their own panels. So unlike most of and I'm going to say unlike most because Maine is the exception, but unlike most of the electronics bills, a manufacturer is just responsible for collecting X number of pounds of electronics. It doesn't matter what manufacturer it is. It doesn't matter, if they are only manufacturing TVs and they collect, tablets or computers or printers, that still counts. So when you get to a scenario where you where you require each manufacturer to collect only their panels, obviously they're not interested in recycling somebody else's panels. So how do you set up a network where you're not getting dumped, where you're not getting solar panels that URT, for example, or our partner right now, one of our partners, LG, is not responsible for collecting Panasonic panels or the Q cells or anything like that, how do you set up a network and a system that prevents you from then having panels that you have to dispose of yourself as the processor? Excuse me. So that is the most difficult step and piece of the law in Niagara for us. Again, we work with that in Maine. We're familiar with that, and we've come up with a solution. And then they'll ship our collectors there in the area. Will ship those up to us in Dover, New Hampshire. And once it arrives at our facility, the first process, obviously after having those received and weighed in, is the panels do go through a shredder. And the whole point of the shredder is to reduce the size and separate the material, the different commodities. After it goes through a shredder, there is a magnet. Now, most solar panels do not have any steel on them, so the magnet comes up clean most of the time. But then it runs through an eddy current, and the 100% focus of the eddy current is to separate out the aluminum. So the aluminum frame comes out, and it's pretty clean. It's separated from the glass and the panel itself. So here you can see that the aluminum then goes straight to the manufacturing process. It's a very clean product. There's nothing else that needs to be done to process that material. We have several aluminum manufacturers and smelters that we work with directly. So then on the other half of the material, then here goes through a hammer mill, which again is a size reduction mechanism. And that's all it does, is it just reduces the size. Coming through the shredder, everything's 2 inches or smaller. Going through the hammer mill, it is essentially a fine sand product. Then it goes through the gravity table. Now the gravity table is able to, it's, for lack of a better term, if you don't know what a gravity table is, it's really a bouncing table that has a bunch of little holes in it. And the heavier product will fall through the holes, and the lighter product will continue along the surface of the gravity table. And that's where we separate out the wafer from the glass. And the glass and the wafers then are able to be reused. The wafer itself comes out. It does come out also with the copper wires and the little bit of circuit board that we do find in some of the inverters that go through as well. All of that material comes out at what we call as the wafer product. That then goes to a copper smelter where the silver, the copper, and a few other trace elements are recovered from that process. The glass is diverted into a different channel, and the glass will go into a mix of process with our CRT glass, and that will head to a manufacturer for tiles, for industrial grade tiles. And we have that process with our CRT glass has been in place for 10 years, probably, maybe not quite that long with our current contractor, but the tiles is an outlet that we have for all of our products for glass. And so that allows that is our process and what happens at our facility. I know that there was probably some questions about that, but that is our current process right now. If we include the waste to energy, and the reason I bring that up is if we look here, if we look in this category right here, there is still some glass that comes out here into this mix. That glass at the smelter is used as a heating source. They actually are able to use that, and it actually burns very hot, and they're able to create not electricity but heat for their furnaces in order to recover the other commodities that they look for from the smelter. So if we include that little bit of glass that does head over to the smelter, 100% of our panels are recycled, and we really look to the next step in our process, going back to our circular economy, would really be to find a solar manufacturer that's interested in the glass is interested in the copper and silver that are recovered and those sorts of things. So then we could then close that loop and incorporate those right back into the manufacturing process for the solar panels.
Ray, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Josh Kelly, Solid Waste Program in Vermont. Do you take any panels for reuse?
So right now we do not have any for reuse. Most of our programs, and this is nationwide, we do not have a contract for large scale utility fields, right? The solar fields that have thousands of panels. Really, to see what we see, and the panels that are coming off of residential homes really are end of life. Not a whole lot of reuse left in them. Now, having said that, it is our desire and our goal to get into the reuse market for solar panels. In order to do that, we need to have, newer panels are always better, but also quantity of the same model is paramount when you're trying to remarket those panels. Instead of, nobody wants one or two panels. They want to use large numbers of panels for, whether that's for stocking in case something does happen to their current functional solar field, that they have some spares on hand. And again, when I say spares, they're looking for hundreds, sometimes thousands of panels to have in hand just in case a hailstorm comes through or something like that. So to answer the question, simply no, we do not currently work in that market, but it is a goal of ours.
Thanks.
Ray, where are the smelters located that you all are working with? Are they domestic or?
It depends on which commodity. So I'll go back here. It depends on which of the commodities you're looking for. The aluminum smelters are mostly here in North America. The tile manufacturing happens mostly in Brazil. That's our primary, and I would probably say 98% of our product goes there. For the wafer material, which would be this material here, we have several smelters that we work with nationwide, or I should say worldwide. One is in Canada, Glencore. There's a couple in Japan that we also work with, Mitsubishi being one of those, another company called Dowa that we work with, and they're the copper smelters. There are no primary copper smelters in the United States, and there's the one in Canada that we do work with.
Thank you.
Did you say that inverters, you sometimes get those too?
We do. The little inverter box that's connected to the back of the panels, the wires, there's a few wires that go in there as well.
Okay, but not the big ones.
No, not the big ones.
And then, so the silica itself, is that going with that's part of the wafer, right?
It is part of the wafer, yes.
But that would be spent, right? So
it is spent, yes.
You said everything's recycled, so
everything's recycled. The silicon as well as the glass are used for heating. It would be the silicon, if there was a way that we could extract, separate, remove the silicon from the glass better, and I do believe eventually that technology will be available. Right now, there's just not a way to remove the silicon from the wafer to be able to recycle that independently.
Yeah, I've heard some of the foreign presentations, and they said that's the biggest issue. But as far as the glass, then when it's made into the tile itself can't be recycled. Is that correct?
Correct. The tile itself is, yeah. I mean, it would just be like any other tile that the tiles that you have in your house. But these are big industrial grade tiles that they use typically in manufacturing warehouse spaces.
Okay.
But yes, they would. There's not a process to recycle those at the moment either.
Any questions from virtual? John's got his hand up.
Hey, thank you very much for your Wait a minute, where's my microphone? My microphone's at the top of my head. That's better. Thanks for the presentation. A couple of questions. The Niagara County law allows a stewardship organization to be formed and run on behalf of numerous manufacturers, but sounds like the issue is that nobody's doing that. It's only LG has come forward to actually take some responsibility. Is that correct?
Yeah, that would be a question directly for Dawn, but I think she said that earlier in her presentation. I don't want to put words in her mouth.
Yeah.
And it is the only manufacturer that we have actually signed an agreement with as well.
Sure.
And we are
okay.
in talks with several, but they're the only ones that have put together a plan and actually submitted it.
Okay. And my second question was about the glass component. You're mixing it with CRT glass and sending it for tile. We've been told that's extraordinarily high quality iron-free glass that unfortunately comes out of the process contaminated, but it seems like kind of a down cycle to mix it with CRT glass for tiles. Are there other markets that you anticipate being available, or are there other technical issues that prevent that from happening?
So there are technically right now for most of the high grade glass reuse processes, it needs to be contaminant free, and it's 99.9% contaminant free. Our process does not lend itself to that currently, but again, as we continually improve our process, our goal would be to utilize the glass from the solar panels. Having that glass go directly into new solar panels would be ideal for us, and what our end goal would be. We're just not there yet.
Yeah,
and that glass is a higher quality, like you said, than the CRT glass. Obviously, the tile manufacturers love the fact that it goes in with that, and it actually improves the quality of their tiles. But at the same time, there would hopefully be better uses for that down the road.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions? Oh, Barb?
What kind of characterization have you done on the incoming tiles, or do you require to be done by the generator?
On the tiles that are being manufactured?
No, on the incoming waste to your facility to make sure you're not accepting hazardous waste.
Got it. So from our standpoint, from a URT standpoint, everything is done on a visual inspection, and we do air monitoring and tests that are required from our eStewards certification. I'm not sure if that really answers your question. We don't do an individual sampling of individual products coming in with every shipment, that sort of thing. And we stay away from hazardous waste. We don't bring hazardous waste into our facilities. And if it does happen on accident, we require the company to come back and pick it up.
I think Phoebe had her hand up.
I was also going to ask about hazardous waste, but Barb beat me to it.
Yeah.
And I
okay.
just wanted to add, Ray, that was a really great presentation. I love learning more about the recycling process for solar.
Yeah, great.
John, did you have another question?
No, I was trying to figure out how to turn that off.
Okay, we'll just pretend it's not there.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Ray, can I ask you, I don't know if you said this, I apologize, plastics, there's a lot of plastics on the wire cover, there's some plastics that come in with this stuff. I know it sounds good to say everything's recycled, but we have to be honest that some of it is what you're calling incineration, which is just replacing another incinerated product. But so we can parse words there, but can you talk about plastics a bit?
Do you want to talk about the plastics with the solar panels, or you want to talk about plastics in general?
Well, either if you're willing, briefly.
Yeah. So you are correct. The insulation for the wires, the plastic case on the inverter, those sorts of things do fall. And I'm going to go back to my diagram here. Those products do fall here into this mix, which are then used for heating, right? Waste to energy. Now, if you want to talk about plastics in general, URT actually does have a plastic separation process in our Beloit Avenue, Wisconsin facility. Again, that's in Janesville, but we are very dedicated to the plastic separation and creating plastics that are separated, that are high enough quality that they can stay domestically. You know, again, without mincing words, most of the plastic that is generated from e-waste in the U.S. does end up overseas to be separated and then reused. Our goal, along with BAN, the Basel Action Network, for those of you who don't know, is to be able to recycle all of our plastics domestically. And in order to be able to do that, we have to be able to sort them into their different polymers here stateside as well. So URT has created a process in Wisconsin where we take the mixture of plastics, because you can imagine consumer electronics have all kinds of different polymers, different types of plastics. And when it's shredded, obviously that plastic, the process is automated, but all of the plastic essentially comes out together in one big mix. And then we are able to take that mix and run it through our plastic separation system, which a big portion of that is a sink float system, where we're able to sink and float different types of plastic based on the salinity of the water that it goes through, and create pure grades of plastic and different polymers. And we have actually committed in 2023 to introduce that process into our Texas facility as well, due to the volumes of product that we have there, and to be able to increase the capacity at both facilities, and as well as increasing the capacity, be able to sort out different polymers as well. So all of those things are things that URT has done, but you know, and I apologize, I don't know your name that asked the question. Plastics are a headache in the recycling industry, especially in the consumer electronic and the solar panel, and you know, all the things that we manage. They are just, you know, there's no uniform, hey, all of this is ABS plastic, it's great, you know, let's just shred it up and we'll clean it up a little bit and be able to sell it right back into the market. It's every imaginable plastic that is out there is in consumer electronics and the products that we see, and therefore, how do we manage that the best of our ability?
Totally respect. Thanks, Ray. And Josh
Yep.
Kelly, by the way, thanks.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We thank you for all that you do